definitely have to be really careful about bumping the table because this little tiny tripod just does not want to actually stand up. It was actually included with the camera, but I'm like, what did you think was gonna happen? Hi, it's me again. My hair has grown significantly since the last video, but is still perfect bedhead. It's been a few months, and I've been productive, and I've been unproductive, and I've bounced between a lot of different things. In the end, I really just needed a win, you know? It had been a while since I was able to actually finish anything. I was doing a lot of different things that were very fulfilling and good in the sense that they were keeping me productive, but none of them actually got finished. Some of them didn't get finished because I had no money to put into them, or I got to a point where I realized that I wasn't going to be able to do it the way that I wanted to, or that it was going to take more time and effort than I could manage at the moment, or I got stuck on something and had to worry about whether or not I was going to do it well enough. I was having health problems, mental health problems, just the normal kind of stuff that gets in the way. And it just was getting to me that nothing was getting done. So I started looking around at things that could get done. This shirt, for example, is one of those things. And you can kind of see my big puffy sleeves. I made this to be a sleep shirt. It's actually based on that shirt that goes with the Picnic Leo costume that I also use for Ferdinand when we do Black Eagles. I just really loved the draft of the sleeve, and I used that and then drafted a new shirt out of lawn to just be a sleep shirt and to just wear and feel fancy and cute. But anyway, I had made the main part of this shirt, and I had done all of the major seams so I could wear it, but I didn't have a collar for it, and I didn't fell all of like the interior seams and stuff, so I was starting to like pop seams just through wear because they weren't particularly strong, and I was wearing it a lot. So the first step was to do that, and I realized in the middle of doing it that it was making me feel so much better to just do some actual finishing work and be able to say, this is now done. So I decided I needed a couple more little wins like that, and that brings me to Erhardt. There is a shirt that I've been using for Erhardt that actually wasn't made for him. I threw it together on Halloween 2013 for our Miguel and Tulio costumes, seen here, and it has desperately needed some TLC if it's going to become part of Erhardt permanently. The main things that need to be fixed or finished are the hem, the cuffs, and the collar, and everything starts with seam ripping. I decided to pick up Erhardt again because, as I was sorting through things, I was talking to a friend over the phone, and we ended up on the topic of Octopath Traveler. I explained roughly and as spoiler-free as possible about Erhardt, and how much I love him as a character. That very night, I saw some breathtaking art by Delaney Januzzi of Ulbrich and Erhardt clashing, and I knew I had to finally finish him. I started working on him sometime last year, but I had a lot of medical issues starting in late 2018 and continuing to mid-2019 that more or less erased any memories I had from that time that weren't medical or pain-related. According to various whip photos, social media posts, and so on, I started him sometime in early April and then stopped working on him in late May. The oldest whip that I have is of the battle skirt from April 9th. I followed up by making the tabard on April 10th. In an Instagram post on April 11th, I officially announced the costume. This collage shows the progress along with the ginger wig that would eventually become the time-skip Ferdinand wig. That was when the Miguel shirt joined the costume as a stand-in. Throughout April, I was working on modeling his sword. At the time, I only had my monoprice Maker Select, and I had to break it into a bunch of pieces and print it all out. The first piece of the blade was printed on April 28th, and I posted the model on Instagram the following day to talk about the progress. The sword blade was printed and assembled on May 2nd, and the hilt printed the following day. I started printing the sheath on May 4th, though I never ended up finishing that. After surgery, I dug out my old Gowry Gabriev wig, and found it to be a great match for Erhardt. It's a Luthien in light blonde from Art of WIGS, which is the blonde counterpart to the stand-in pumpkin Ferdinand wig. I had ordered some Queen Green contacts from TTDI on May 8th, and when they arrived I did another full test wear on May 26th after an afternoon airbrush crash course courtesy of Matt from Typo 9 Cosplay. That added weathering to the quilted pieces. I used my white linen jabbet from my Picnic Leo costume to complete the look. And that's it. I wasn't able to push myself to finish him in time for Anime Next in June, so he ended up getting set aside until now. My usual problem with costumes is that they always get rushed due to con deadlines and never get properly finished. Miguel was made for Halloween, but was no exception. I also just didn't know as much about proper construction back then, so the cuffs and collar were a hot mess, and would have been a hot mess even if they weren't so rushed. They didn't actually have closures and therefore didn't keep the sleeves in place or do anything other than gather and bind the edge of the sleeve. It seemed like they were set in like you would bias tape, with right sides together on the first pass and then top stitched on the second, but man was I bad at that. What a nightmare. Once the cuffs were detached, I regathered the sleeves with intact basted threads, and picked out some of the seam to allow room for my hand to go through when putting the shirt on. Before then, I had just been shoving my hand through and praying that I didn't rip anything. With that done, I pinned the cuff back onto the sleeve and started backstitching to secure it, right sides together. This sleeve was the first one I did, and I did a considerably better job on the second, but of course all the footage I have is of the first. Oops. After the cuff was secured, it was time to fold the raw edge in on the inside of the cuff, and then pin it in place over the other raw edges, fully encasing them. The backside was then whipped down to secure it in place, using extra stitches to negotiate the gathering a little bit better. Again, I did better on the second cuff, which I started with right after I finished the first. All in all, it took an afternoon to remove and redo both of the cuffs. I moved on from the sleeves to address the ratty, unhemmed edge of the shirt. I neglected it because it was always tucked in, and therefore didn't need to be finished because no one would see it, right? This is a fallacy I always end up falling into, but man does it make me feel terrible. Someone will say, "Oh, your shirt looks amazing," and I'll say, "Thanks," but the entire compliment is then negated in my head because I know how shitty it looks where they can't see it. It saves time when the deadlines are looming, but it always leaves me with a compliment debuff. So maybe I should finally take the hint and actually finish things so I can just feel pride instead. The hem was fairly simple, getting folded twice to fully encase the raw edge, and then felled into place. This is where I admit that I don't actually know or care what the difference between whip stitches and felling stitches are. They function more or less the same way and accomplish the same tasks, and from my perspective, it's primarily a difference in how you hold things, which is always superseded for me by how much it makes my hands hurt to hold things one way versus the other. Maybe I'm only doing one. Maybe I'm doing both. Maybe I'm doing neither. Who knows? What matters is that the stitches grab as few threads as possible to be as invisible as possible while still securing the hem. I did this around the edges of the hip split and the bottom edges of the flaps that the splits created. I'm not going to show it on camera, but the back flap is several inches longer than the front to help accommodate my unreasonable ass, which I have to give it to past me as foresight that I always forget in the present. I wish the front flap was the same length to match for decency's sake, but since the shirt is already made, I can't really cut it differently now. The hem took all afternoon into evening, which is why the footage here is in a low-light room with a tiny ring light trying to make what I'm doing actually visible to the camera. I definitely should have gotten the footage way earlier in the day when there was still natural light, but I got too into the zone and totally forgot until the very end. I actually didn't sleep that night because I stayed up too late playing Minecraft with friends. Minnie Meowsketeer created a trading hall and an iron farm, and we were all super invested in helping with both. I ended up beautifying the trading hall after she and Psychro finally went to bed, and then I went AFK by the farm to rack up some iron for the crew. By then, it was bright enough to start working again, so it was collar time. The collar was the worst finished thing about the shirt by far. It was somehow top-stitched on both sides, but independently, which, wow, past me, just wow. This made it really janky, and it actually pulled free of the shirt body at a couple points, leaving huge gaping holes that I can't believe I just shrugged off. Removing it was a huge chore from the bizarre way it was put on, requiring both sides to be removed independently, which was way easier said than done. It took forever, and even when I was finally finished, I had to go back and trim bits of the collar piece itself because I still couldn't separate the sides. Before I could reattach the collar, I had to fix the front split. It had been folded roughly and top-stitched, big surprise, so the only proper solution was to roll it back in on itself as much as I could without warping things too much, and then fell that tiny roll into place. It's definitely not perfect, but it's at least encased now. I should probably reinforce this and the other two splits with squares of fabric, a la Bernadette Banner's latest video on making almost this exact same shirt, but again, no matching linen right now, so we'll just be really gentle with it in the meantime. Just like the cuffs, I started reattaching the collar by pinning it down right sides together and backstitched around the entirety of the neck hole. Once that was done, I spent a really long time trying to adjust the folded portion under the other side so that the collar laid more smoothly. It required a lot of going from one side to the other, a little more here, a little less there, but eventually I got it into a place that I could be satisfied with. And then it was time to whip it in place and secure the collar once and for all. At this point, I was really overjoyed with my progress and how much better the shirt looked. It wasn't embarrassing anymore. I posted a quick pic to Twitter to show it off, and then proceeded to just wear it for a few days. Even with the slightly tight fit from the weight I've gained since it was made back in 2013, it was super comfortable as a sleep shirt. I justified it by saying that it would break it in more and make it even more comfortable, but really I just wanted to feel like a poofy medieval boy. Anyway, back to progress. The cuffs, to be proper cuffs, need closures. Unfortunately, the cuffs aren't wide enough to go around my wrists with enough to overlap for buttons. At least, one of them isn't. So I needed to go for hooks and bars instead. I decided to opt for thread bars this time, because I'd never tried it before, and overall, they are faster and easier to attach than the provided eyes. To make thread bars, you do the normal thread anchoring stitches, then do one final stitch without pulling the thread taut. Instead, you use that loop as if it's an active loop when crocheting, and do a crocheted style chain stitch using your fingers. I'm sure you could use a tiny hook to do this too, but it's easy enough to do with just your fingers that I don't think it's worth the effort. I did 20 of these tiny chain stitches, pulling them tight after each stitch, and then ended it off by passing the needle through the loop to knot the end. At that point, you just anchor your thread bar at the distance that allows it to lay flat against the cuff, travel your needle between the layers of the cuff and the fabric, and pop up again where you want your second thread bar to begin. I initially did 2 of these per cuff, but I needed to add an extra thread bar and hook to improve the look of the cuff on one of them. Again, working with what I have, doing what I can to improve it. The very last raw edge that needed to be covered was at the wrists where the split had been opened. I'm sure that there's a clever way to do this, but I was not clever when I put the cuffs back on, and definitely couldn't be clever once it was time to finish it up. So I ended up grabbing some red grosgrain ribbon that I had in my stash and used it to bind the raw edge. The ribbon itself was 1.5 inches wide, so I cut it down the center and folded the raw edge under before tacking it down. The red of the ribbon is a slightly different color. It's brighter than the rest of the shirt, but it's what I had on hand, so that's what I used. There wasn't anything fancy or special about how I did this. I just pinned and whipped it down to cover everything on the outside and seal off the open French seam. Last but not least, the hooks. These are your standard small hooks, nothing fancy. I overlapped the sleeve to find where it was snug but comfortable on my wrist, marked the edge of the upper cuff overlap with a pin on the lower cuff, then pulled the sleeve off. I caught the hooks on the thread bars, realigned the cuff at the pin, then pinned where the hooks should be to hold the cuff at that point. From there, it was just the tedious task of securing each hook by going around each loop and barring across the front to make it really snug. With that done, the shirt was finally, almost 7 years later to the day, complete. Obviously, this isn't all for Erhardt. I still have to finish off all of the quilted armor, the additional leather work, gloves, boots, accessories, you know, the sword. But I hope you enjoyed coming along for the completion of this shirt. I'm feeling really good about this project, especially since it's only a year old. I don't dislike any of the work that I've already done, except for the shirt, of course, which was 7 years old. But the rest of it is still stuff that I enjoy and think is good, so I'm happy to just keep working on it and finish it. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them below. If you want more informal daily write-ups on what kind of progress I'm making, make sure to check out my Patreon, link below in the description, and my other social media that I check fairly frequently are my Twitter and my Instagram. All of them are Cleotha, same as this channel. And I'll see you guys next time in the next part of the video. So, bye. I didn't, actually look at my script at all. Yeah, I skipped over a large section where I talked about, how hot it was in the house and did a lot of complaining. I don't need to complain. I wrote this apparently when I felt like I needed to complain, but I don't need to complain.
Good.
My only complaint is that maybe I should have shaved before this. One way or another, I'm gonna end up with my bedhead as a catchphrase.
Yeah.
Because I keep mentioning my bedhead because I'm just always get in front of the camera. Hey, I didn't prepare for this at all. What? Do you want to be on camera? Come here. Meow. Say hi, Lily. No. No. Grumble. You say hi? Everyone loves a cat cam.
Yeah.
Do you want to be an internet star? Yeah, Grumble? Grumble, grumble? Do you want to be famous on the internet? Don't you want them to see how beautiful you are? Or are you coming back? Come here. Meow. Meow. Giving you love is making the camera jiggle. You're gonna knock it over and not even with your head this time. Well, I guess it still technically is with her head, but not directly. It's an indirect headbutt. I still want you in front of the camera. I really want to give you a kiss. Big. Mwah. Just a big smooch. I just want one smooch. Just one single smooch. Is that so much to ask?
Lily.
As I just sit here and giggle to myself, hee 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 hee.
Cats.
I love my cat. Can I help you? Can I help you? Lily, can I have a kiss? I can't have a kiss. They can see your ears in some of these shots, you know. They can probably hear you purring. What a difference it would make if I actually sat up straight and had good posture during this. I'd be so much taller looking. But then my hair doesn't look as nice. Just realized that somebody's weed whacking.
Yes.
Lawn blowing outside.
Yes.
So I actually can't use any of this. Oh good, they stopped. No,
they're not gonna stop.
This is what all the real YouTubers complain about.
Yep.
Lily. Lily. Yeah? Why don't you yell at the weed eater man to go away? Just yell at him. Tell him to leave. Can you do that for me? He'll listen because you're beautiful. My cat's gonna headbutt the camera and knock it over. Lily. Leave it alone. Yeah. Yeah, you. Nobody can hear the cute sounds that you make because of the weed eater. Yeah. Yeah. Can I help you? Lily. You can't stand on my computer. Yeah? Yeah? They can see your dingleberry.
Yuck.
They can see the dingleberry you're trying to smush onto my face. She left. I hope I didn't look like a fucking psycho that whole time. Just do a voiceover and try and match my own mouth flaps.
No, not that, but like.
There's like somebody like weed eating outside now and like
Yes.
police sirens. Like I have no idea what is actually in this video. But I gave it my all.
Yeah. I'm your boyfriend and I'm in the cam.
Boyfriend cam.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
It's a video. Okay.